Well, when you're fasting, you can't, it's impossible to build muscle. I can shoot you with, I don't know, gallons of growth hormone. You aren't building any muscle. There's no building blocks. You have to have peptide, you have to have amino acids to build new muscle. So fasting is completely catabolic. Now, again, I'm not, that's not to say that there's not a place or a time for fasting. But if you're going to tell me my goal is to build muscle, then fasting shouldn't be a reflection of an all day fast.
We are about to launch.
Truth, not trends.
Truth, not trends.
Truth, not trends.
That's right.
We got him in there.
What's up, everybody? Liam Bauer, Jesse Schmidt, and some other guy in the background, Eric Fong.
Hey,
Oh, we're here in the studio live again, changing the world one set at a time. Train outside the box. TNT Strength.
this is the podcast where we help you maximize your strength safely
And efficiently.
as possible. My name's Jesse Schmidt. I've been a strength coach for 2,594 days.
My name is Liam Bauer. I have been a strength coach for 36 years and counting.
My name is Eric Fong. I've been a strength coach for about 5 months.
There we go.
Hello.
We got him in there.
We're starting a new generation over here, people.
The TNT team is growing. Folks, today we have a return guest. It's the return of the Jedi, Dr. Bill Campbell, PhD.
P. Izzle Dizzle. He's here. He's back from Florida, all the way from sunny Florida. Dr. Bill Campbell has joined us once again in TNT land.
He is a fat loss researcher. He has read thousands of studies and put on many of his own that we're going to talk, some of which we're going to talk about in this interview today. We get into some fascinating topics, like I learned some terms of hyperphagia, body fat overshoot.
That's right. We're talking about GLP-1 agonist drugs like Ozempic and those type of things. We were talking about extreme caloric deficits stuff. What else? We're talking about perimenopausal women and how they're dealing with hormonal shifts that may be affecting their abilities to have success with dieting, all kinds of amazing topics.
Basically, if you're trying to gain some muscle or lose some body fat, you better listen close because Dr. Campbell's the man and he will help you get there. Before we get to the episode, though, we're going to remind you to check out tntstrength.com. There's a store there. It has nutritional supplements in it. So whether you're trying to gain some muscle or lose some body fat, this is a great place to check out. We've got 5 supplements. Count them. 1.
Boom, we got some whey protein. What number is that, Eric? 1.
Oh, what?
There we go. We got some creatine monohydrate. What is that?
2.
2. There we go. We have some fish oil.
3.
We have some probiotics.
4.
And last but not least, K2D3. That would be
That makes 5.
5
Yum, yum.
amazing supplements. Eric is on the ball. He's ready.
People, remember at TNT, we recommend you follow a high-protein, whole food diet. If you know you have some gaps in your nutrition, however, these are a great way to fill them in.
That's right.
Make sure you're accomplishing all your dietary nutritional goals.
You want to find out more about that high-protein whole food diet? You can check it out. Shoot us an email, and I will send you a PDF, everything you ever wanted to know.
TNTstrength.com is the place to go. And without further ado, please enjoy this interview with Dr. Bill Campbell.
Boom. What's up, Dr. Campbell?
Not much. Boy, one of you's looking pretty sharply dressed.
Yeah.
Hang on one second here.
How's your shoulder
I'm gonna
doing?
hear all these compliments.
So it's better than the last time we talked, but if I don't put about 20 minutes each day, the next day I feel it. Like hopefully it'll end like in a year or two, but it's insane if I don't do my own little routine, I can just feel like it hurts more. I lose a little more mobility. So it's I still can't squat. That's the main thing where I was kind of complaining and being a big baby to you. I just would love to be.
I'm frustrated because I want you to be able to, explore the plan that we were working on.
Well, like I said, there's a lot of the things that I can do. I've just been I don't know what else to say. A baby, a big brat about not doing. If I can't do it all, I don't want to do any of it. But
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah.
no, I've been doing some of the just the easier stuff, the leg, the machine-based stuff, lower body stuff. And the other thing too, I loved, and I haven't done it for a while. And thank you, by the way. Thank you for making them for me. I love that conditioning routine you wrote. I loved it.
Nice.
What was that?
The way that you wrote it, it sounds like you have like higher and higher levels.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's cool.
Yeah. I think there's at least 5.
Did you create them yourself, or did you take some from this thing and this thing?
Yeah, honestly, I'm always doing that. Like, I'm always like, being inspired by stuff and then like making my own version, right? Like, Jesse sort of jokingly says, I'm like Bruce Lee, you take the stuff and then you leave what you don't like. And
Yeah.
I didn't invent burpees, but, I'm innovating like with how you string things together and
Can you still hear me? Think they froze out.
Oh man, did you hear me call Liam the Michelangelo of exercise?
No.
Oh my God.
what?
All right, well, we had to repeat it there just so you get it on recording.
Yeah, so I was saying I have many influences, right? And I'm just constantly innovating off of the stuff that I'm absorbing.
Do you do much programming for middle-aged / older women?
Yeah, I mean any group. Yeah, all ages and abilities is what I
That's
like
that's
to
our
say.
specialty, Dr. Campbell. We're working with the 50+ crowd over here at TNT mostly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then I would ask, how much do you like that conditioning routine? I don't know if you remember it, but it was I think you would call it the basic one. But
Yeah,
for me it was
yeah. I think it was level 1.
yes, I'm gonna call it level 8, but you call it level 1. But when I talk about it to my children, I'm like, I'm doing level 8.
Nice.
Can you give I mean, obviously you can't be sedentary and well, you could just in your times would be horrible. Do you approach let's just use my wife. She's 51. She's somewhat, let's say she wasn't fit. Do you back off on anything typically that you would do for that type of female who's relatively new to fitness?
Sure. There's no like set answer. We have our own onboarding system, right, where we're bringing people in, and so we're basically evaluating from day one, like where are they right now. And I would not like meet someone for the first time and make them do that, right, ever. No matter what, even if they seemed fit, I don't usually like try to crush people on the first day, right, or make them feel too challenged or make them feel like they're not in great shape. Some trainers use that idea thinking like, well, the person will recognize they need me if I like make them throw up on day one, right? Like, I don't think that's a good way to go. So it's unlikely that I would give somebody that immediately unless they were just clearly super fit, right? And we do get some super fit people as well, but deconditioned people. Although the other side of it is it's completely scalable, right? So I can give a much scaled down version of a burpee, a scaled down version of each thing, right? And build up the amplitude, build up in that way. Because you can do a burpee literally where you just put your hands, step out one foot, step out the other foot, step that foot back in, step it back, stand back up, right? Like a super regressed, right? And again,
Yes.
not worrying about times as much, but just getting the reps in, and then we can keep going up and up and up. There's hundreds of versions of burpees, right? The most basic version is just, the squat thrust, right? Hands hit the deck, feet jump in and out, stand up. That's it. All the other stuff was added over the years, the push-up variations and crazy fun.
So
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah. So, and I have probably 100 versions in my head that I could do, but I keep them simple. If I work, say with like I work with, I used to work with a lot of professional MMA guys. I make some much more complicated versions for them, right? Because that might be like when they get to the bottom, they do like a sit out and then they come back up, or things that will have some meaning to their mobility patterns, of what they might encounter in their job, so to speak.
And then I don't know if you guys have. I mean, if you want to.
Oh yeah, we have questions for you. We're here to interview you, Dr. Campbell.
Yeah.
What is this reverse interview you've got?
Well,
I'm happy to talk to you a lot more on another platform.
Yep, you go to your questions, but I just appreciate your expertise and skill set. So
I'm just kidding with you, Dr. Campbell. You're a curious individual and a learned a learned individual. So we love talking with you and just shooting the shit. It's we get great conversations out of it. So
awesome.
we glad to have you back with us here.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jesse does have some questions.
I do. Well, okay. You've had some recent posts that I would love to talk with you about. So,
all right.
If you're listening to this episode, we're talking with Dr. Bill Campbell, PhD on Instagram. Puts out a lot of amazing content. And recently, you made a post about women going through menopause who are trying to lose body fat, and that is actually really topical for us right now because we recently did a podcast interview with one of Liam's longtime colleagues, specifically about women strength training during pregnancy, postpartum, and some different considerations that should be made. And I mean, with the population we're working with here at the TNT studio, we have a lot of women in there, around menopause. And
or post-menopause.
Yeah, definitely. Pre, during, post, right? All around there. And so, everybody wants to look and feel good in their body. And let me see if I remember this post. The gist of the post that I took away was that during menopause for many women is a particularly challenging time to be losing body fat. And I think what you said is that to be in a calorie deficit for an extended period of time is just not, I don't know, you got to help me with the
It's not sustainable.
Yeah, not sustainable.
I think, well, it's not good for anybody. The longer and longer one diets, the more likely that they're not going to adhere after a certain period of time. Research is pretty clear on that. And then the second thing is you start getting these negative physiological adaptations that make keeping that weight off more difficult when the diet is over. And this is particularly true with an elongated, aggressive dieting phase. So that's the worst of both worlds, is to be aggressive and to do it for a long period of time. Very likely that you're going to come out of that in not a good spot.
Right. And so just to clarify, when you say like negative physiological adaptations, do you mean losing muscle?
Yeah, that would be the most prevalent one. And then also a suppressed metabolic rate, but they kind of go hand in hand.
Right.
And then also related to that is hyperphagia. Are you familiar with that term?
Yeah, I recognize it, but please remind everyone.
So what we think, so hyperphagia usually will manifest when a diet is over, and essentially it's an uncontrollable desire to eat. So it is a massive increase or elevation in appetite.
And it's diagnosable.
No, I would say it's more I would definitely say it's a subjective phenomenon. But it's
well, because that's the first time I've really, maybe I've heard the term before, but first time I've had a conversation about it. But I think that's a sensation that just about everybody who's been in a calorie deficit is familiar with.
Yeah. So I remember seeing Lee Haney after he won Mr. Olympia, and they were like, you just won the Mr. Olympia, and well, what are you thinking about? And he's like, pizza. That was like the first thing out of his mouth.
Yeah, that not surprising. And I would say that, yeah, I don't think it's diagnosable, but one thing that I've noticed, and again, I'm a fat loss researcher, so I've read, hundreds and hundreds and if not thousands of studies where and it's not just me, other people have written about this, but where we see this manifested is almost predictable. It's when somebody diets very aggressively for an extended period of time, so more than a few days or a few weeks. But we've even seen this 8 weeks of dieting. So let's just say more than a few weeks of dieting. So very aggressive for more than a few weeks. They've clearly lost lean tissue. The diet is now over. They experience, and what we can document is, in the studies that have done this, is two things. We can document weight regain and we can document calorie intake in the studies that have looked at this. And it seems as though this elevated appetite or massive increase in the drive to eat. It seems to persist until the point when the dieter has gained back all of the lean tissue that they lost during the diet.
Yeah.
That almost makes biological sense, right?
Yeah.
I don't remember if we talked about the protein leverage hypothesis in our last conversation, Dr. Campbell, but that sounds like it right there. That's the idea that we as humans just eat until we eat calories until we get the amount of protein that we need.
Yeah, so I would say the protein leverage hypothesis is a little more preventive of weight gain. This is well, let me just finish this description. So all that's fine. Okay, I just need to get my lean tissue back, and then my appetite will lower. But what happens, and this is what what I notice a lot now when I'm looking at these aggressive research studies, is these dieters have gained not only the body fat back that they lost, but they are having something called body fat overshoot, where they have gained more body fat after the diet is over in a very short period of time, so much so that they have more fat now than they had before their diet started. So they are in a much worse place because of their dieting strategy where they lost lean tissue. So
I call it the January effect.
yeah. So if you do your job, if you do due diligence during the fat loss phase and you protect the lean tissue, you kind of prevent all of this hyperphagia and all these other negative consequences. So it's full circle. I didn't discover this. I just have taken it seriously, and obviously I think we're all on the same page. When you diet, fat loss is the goal, but a close second is maintaining the lean tissue throughout the process.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, I mean, have you guys done experiments with, sort of cycling the calories up and down for, controlled periods, like extreme, if you will, but for very brief, like a week or two, very low and then back up, they did a thing years ago. You may have seen it. I don't know if you remember ABDC with like anabolic.
Yeah, I remember that diet.
Cycling, right, of the calories and the training and everything, right, over like little blocks.
I remember reading about that in Muscle Media 2000. Do you remember that, Mac?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So
I remember reading about that diet. I don't remember, was it Mario Di Pasqua? I don't remember who the
yeah, I can't remember, but I think it was some guys out of Sweden or somewhere. But I mean, I had some people experimenting with it, and in some ways it makes sense, right? It was obviously poo-pooed by many, but it lends itself to that concept of like not doing extreme for longer periods of time that can drive everything down, right? Because it becomes difficult to hold on to the muscle. My experience has been like I like lower carb stuff, and I've played with it for decades. My most successful sort of body composition changes come when I do like what they call cyclical ketogenic diets, where I cycle the carb back in briefly and allow myself to like carb up a little, if you will. And then, and when I've done that consistently, it's very effective for protecting the lean mass, allowing for my hunger, getting the pump that you want, feeling strong with the workouts. It has a balance for all those things with the strength training because you got enough carbs to drive through, right?
Yep.
And for me, what's worked so easily is, 5 days of low carbs and the weekend carb up,
It's funny that you say that because I typically follow like a pretty low carb nutrition plan. Also, it's not like a conscious effort. I just try to eat a high protein diet, and it ends up I'm not in ketosis, but it tends to be low carb. But then I find that like maybe once every couple of months, I have a weekend where I reflect. I'm like, oh wow, I ate a family sized bag of potato chips this weekend, and I did like my body was just like, all right, it's time for some carbs, and I just do it like subconsciously.
Yeah. I am on that. We are planning some research just to what you guys were saying. This very aggressive but very short periods, because limited research suggests that you can get, let's just essentially say, all positive and avoid the negative, even when you're extremely aggressive, as long as it's only for a few days. So you kind of get in, you peel off some fat, but you haven't been there long enough to lose lean tissue. Then you come out of it. And then I think where my lab will progress to is then, putting some of these back to back, kind of like the AB. And again, I don't remember the ABCD diet specifically.
I'll have to see if I can find it. But I actually have a buddy who wrote a book with this exact thing in mind. It's called XDL, and it's about this extreme dieting. So it's designed basically for guys who are like, trying to get ready for like a photo shoot or a contest thing. but like it's essentially like 1 or 2 weeks of like very intense dieting. It couples the training and everything with it, right?
Yep.
But it's, we're talking like 30, 40% probably deficit or not, if not more, right? But brief,
Yeah.
so it's designed to be done in like literally in like 7-day cycles.
What we're doing now, we just got approval. I actually haven't recruited for it yet. We're recruiting females, middle-aged females, and this is going to be a case series study. So a case series study is, it's like,
I found this on the web for studies.
wow, hold on.
Oh wow, you got your AI assistant helping you recruit over there.
I think that was Siri helping. Yeah. I'll take all the help I can get. Yeah.
I'm on it, Dr. Campbell. I'll have 5 candidates for you in 30 minutes.
I'll take it. Case series is where it's almost like a case study, but there's multiple case studies. So in this case, we're going to have 8 women separated. Let me shut that down.
I think it's because when you say series, she thinks you're talking to her.
I think you're right. Sorry. Case. That's probably it. We're dividing this essentially across the menopause, perimenopause. So we're going to have 2 of these females. I'm going to give you the age brackets and then the actual study design. So 2 women premenopause, 2 other females in perimenopause who are going through menopause now. And then the final 4 subjects are all postmenopausal, 2 on HRT, 2 that are not taking any HRT.
Interesting.
What we're having them do is consume for 4 days about 200 to 300 calories per day. So a really aggressive diet, all protein or as much protein as we can. So I think it's 1.6 grams per kg. So get that much in protein with as little additional carbs and fat as possible.
Nice.
And then in addition to that,
that's old school.
What's that?
I said that's old school right there.
Yeah, yeah. And then we're having them walk 6 hours per day for these 4 days.
Holy crap. It's a lot of walking.
A lot of walking, not many calories, and then doing blood work.
Will that be controlled? Like, will you have them walking on a treadmill or something where you can make sure it's happening? Or
they have to do it in Tampa, like in our campus, we'll say. But no, it can, if they want to do a treadmill, if they want to use the indoor gym, the indoor track that we have, great. But we'll have step counts, so we'll have pedometers, so we'll be able to verify. I mean, I guess they could put it on a dog and tell the dog to run, but ideally that won't happen.
This is kind of tangentially related, Dr. Campbell, but I mean, as we talk about getting in kind of a steep calorie deficit, where my mind goes is to fasting, which is popular these days. You got people out there like Dr. Jason Fung and Dr. Benjamin Bickman, who are big fans of fasting. And I wonder what your familiarity is, or have you done any studies with fasting, like rather than, having a couple hundred calories on a day, maybe 0 calories for a day or 2, and then a regular diet, the rest of the days or something like that. Was one of the interesting arguments that ongoing debates is about, the influence of hormones during fasting or time restricted eating or intermittent fasting, whatever you want to call it. And you got certain people who say, oh yeah, well, it's great to fast because, your growth hormone increases, and your insulin sensitivity increases. And then you get other people like Dr. Lane Norton who say, well, it's only an acute increase. You're not causing a chronic increase just for this short-term fast. So I'm just interested to get your general thoughts on fasting as it relates to muscle or body fat loss.
Well, one thing on the growth hormone aspect, elevated growth hormone can just as easily be a sign of anabolic resistance. So we know that when you diet, that induces anabolic resistance. It's one of the reasons why it's really difficult to build muscle when you're in a caloric deficit. So under non-dieting conditions, your body will naturally produce growth hormone. Growth hormone will then stimulate the production of IGF-1 in the liver, which is a very anabolic hormone. But in a dieting situation or a caloric deficit, what happens is growth hormone ceases to stimulate the production of IGF-1. So IGF-1 levels are lower. And when IGF-1 levels are lower, they normally will have a natural negative feedback loop on somatostatin, which then lowers growth hormone. because hey, growth hormone has done its job. Here I am. I'm IGF-1. I'm in systemic circulation. But under conditions of anabolic resistance, IGF-1 is not being produced and or secreted and released to the circulation. And so growth hormone there's no brakes on growth hormone. So it keeps being put out, which is not so bad for fat loss, because growth hormones are pretty potent lipolytic hormone. It will cause the breakdown of fat, but what you're paying for that in an anabolic, a lack of an anabolic environment. Again, a lot of people will call this what it is it's a disrupted IGF-1 axis. And I think, yeah, a lot of people, they'll latch onto the growth hormone. They'll even say, hey, look, growth hormone, you'll build muscle. Well, when you're fasting, you can't, it's impossible to build muscle. I can shoot you with, I don't know, gallons of growth hormone. You aren't building any muscle. There's no building blocks. You have to have peptide. You have to have amino acids to build new muscle. So fasting is completely catabolic. Now, again, that's not to say that there's not a place or a time for fasting. But if you're going to tell me my goal is to build muscle, then fasting shouldn't be a reflection of an all-day fast.
Got it. So the big takeaway, if your goal is to gain, if your number one goal, because you can have everybody's got multiple goals, right? But if your number one goal is to lose body fat, maybe fasting is a good idea. But if your number one goal is to build muscle, maybe fasting is not the route to take.
Yes, exactly. And all day fast, you're working against your stated goals. And I'll give a practical example. We'll use the term time restricted feeding, because that's technically what I do. Although I don't like to say that, because then I get labeled as whatever. But it's what I practice. But the reason I don't so I don't usually eat till about 11 or 12. The reason I don't do that is because I'm not hungry in the morning. And I have to be careful that I don't gain body fat. So I have to do everything I can to help keep my body fat levels low. So I am prioritizing an eating system that helps me keep my body fat levels low. But I'm also admittedly saying, I'm leaving a little bit of muscle gains on the table, because if I really wanted to maximize everything about my muscle tissue, I would have protein when I got up in the morning or sometime before 11 o'clock. So I'm missing 4 hours or so. Well, maybe, yeah, 4 or 5 hours of a non-protein feeding window, just because I don't want the calories. I'm not hungry.
And that's basically because we optimize muscle protein synthesis when we get 3 or 4 kind of split up feedings of protein throughout the day.
Yep. So it's all good. I'm just prioritizing my primary goal, which happens to be, hey, I want to keep body fat. I don't want to be hungry as much, or I don't want to eat these calories, because I'm going to be hungrier at 6 o'clock tonight. And if I already had 500 calories at 8 o'clock in the morning, I'd rather have those calories when I know my natural hunger drive is higher.
Right. Cool. Well, yeah. Thank you for that answer. I think that makes it really clear. And I think, I mentioned Dr. Jason Fung and Dr. Benjamin Bickman. And I think, generally those two individuals, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they're generally speaking to the general American population and coming from a kind of holistic health standpoint, where I think their avatar, listener is somebody who's probably got, extra body fat to get rid of. They're probably not talking to the muscle optimization crowd as much. So that makes sense why their people would be more focused on the body fat loss.
Yeah. And obviously we already know that the most, the larger part of the population, right? Most of them could probably use to lose some body fat, unfortunately. Right?
Yes.
So, and we do want them to not lose muscle, but, they're not worried so much about optimizing every ounce of muscle that they can put on, but at least let's help them hold on to it. So for me, we want a little bit of that, right? We don't want them to lose any, like you described much earlier, right? That's the worst case scenario, right? That they're smaller fat people, right?
Yes. Yep.
And they feel like they've had success. Like, I am lighter. Yes, you are, but now you lost your engine. And and that loop is, a frightening one.
Hey, what are those guys doing here?
Whenever I feel like I'm stalling out on my bench press, I know I need a new strength curve.
Whether you're stalling out on the road or stalling out in the gym, you need something with great engineering.
That's right. And
So look for the pendulum. Pendulum.
Not just your average strength machines.
No, they have smooth strength curves.
Amazing rigidity.
And did we mention the engineering's fantastic?
That's right. Not to mention, they come in cool colors.
Like red.
And silver. Well, that was kind of weird. What was that all about? Back to the interview.
I have two other topics I'd like to talk with you about, Dr. Campbell, because your takes are just absolutely fascinating. Really appreciate you spending time with us today. So this other one, I don't know if you've heard of this book. It came out very recently. It's called Magic Pill. Does that ring a bell?
I'm not familiar with it.
All right. Right now, everybody needs to read this book. Okay. So Magic Pill was written by a British journalist named Johann Hari, and it is about fat loss drugs, Ozempic, Wegovy,
Yes,
which are super popular right now. And he tackles this topic from a bunch of different angles, from body positivity to, the positives, the, potential negatives, which there are some very scary side effects for these drugs. Do you have this is like an overly broad question, but do you have a general perspective on these new drugs, Dr. Campbell?
Yeah, I've spent time as a fat loss researcher. I spent time learning about how they work. So what are they doing in the body? So to that extent, I'm educated on how they work, or how we think they work.
Yeah, because they haven't been studied long term. They haven't existed for long enough for us to know what the chronic effects are.
Yeah, we definitely don't have long-term outcome effects on our health because, I think they've been out for about 10 years, at least versions of them. And then in the last 5 years, the Ozempic really has taken off. Just my general thoughts on them are my gut response. Like if I just lived life without ever checking any of my thoughts, I don't like them because I'm an exercise and nutrition person. And that's how I study. That's what I devote my life to, is how can we help people lose fat via exercise and nutritional interventions. And then you're going to just take this pill, and that to some extent eliminates the need for this, at least in terms of body fat reduction. So that's my gut instinct. And then I'm like, all right, well, I'm an intelligent human. I should think a little bit more broadly about this. And my thinking is twofold. One, I don't want to live in a sick country, and our country is not healthy. There's a lot of obesity. And since I don't want to live in a healthy country or a sick nation, I have to ask, is there even a pharmacological option that could help some people lose excess body weight? And it appears the answer is yes, with these GLP-1 agonists, or Ozempic, Wegovy, whatever we want to call them. So I'm like, okay. Then I'm like, all right. So yes, maybe that helps the obesity epidemic. It seems to be relatively safe. We have documented side effects. We have some that are very severe, and then we have sometimes people don't experience any. So that's all over the board. And then I think, okay, well, my research exists to serve fitness professionals. That's how I see it. A lot of weight loss coaches, personal trainers. So I'm thinking, well, how does this impact the population that I serve? And I think it can be very positive, because what we have is a population of people who, before losing weight through taking these drugs, medications, would have never considered stepping a foot inside a fitness facility. One, they can't fit in the machines. Two, they feel like everybody's looking at them, and there's a lot of anxiety. But now, if they lost 50, 80, 100 pounds from the medication, now I think they're going to, at least more so, be open to the idea of embracing fitness. And who better to embrace this new population of people than fitness professionals? And then you add to that, it seems from the limited research, that one of the harms is an elevated loss of lean tissue from taking these medications that seems to be greater than what we would experience from dieting alone. Who better to help prevent this side effect than a fitness professional who can stimulate muscle, prioritize protein? So I like the idea of, again, I already told you where my immediate gut reaction is. And then as I try to think, and it really doesn't matter what Bill thinks, because they're not going away. So I think we as fitness professionals should probably, one, not put our heads in the sand because we're going to get passed by, but two, even go as far as to have a part of our businesses that would cater to people. Because I'll tell you this, and I help well, one person right now. There are people who don't want to take this, and they're going to try to lose weight again for the 28th time, or there are people who aren't having a good experience with these medications who want to get off, or they've lost a lot of weight and they don't want to keep taking it. So whether you're going to help people prevent that don't want to take it, or they're currently on it, or they want to get off, I think we probably should be embracing this and at least having some messaging to say, hey, I can help you.
Yeah.
Let's do this together.
Yeah, that's great. I like it. Unfortunately, I've seen in my own sphere, literally, these people that are like so, I don't know. I don't want to use the word lazy. I don't know what the right word is, but I mean, I know a person personally who's like so excited that they were diagnosed pre-diabetic. They were gonna get put on these drugs, but they're only happy about it. They're like happy to be pre-diabetic because they want to lose weight using the drugs, right? Like they won't use any other method, like a quick fix. Awesome, right? I'm excited that I'm pre-diabetic, so they'll give me those drugs, and now I got a way to lose weight easily, right? And I'm like, this is not the way to go through life, you know what I mean? And it's like, literally, that's their take on it. Like, this is great. The doctor told me I get to take these drugs, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, that's scary.
Yeah, I have to say I'm skeptical as well, because I mean we started out talking about hyperphagia, right? So let's say you take the drug for a while, it's super effective, you lose 50 or 100 pounds, and then you stop taking the drug, right?
Yeah,
Because you've achieved the results you're looking for, but you haven't had any habit change. Well, now I can't remember what the term was that you used, Dr. Campbell, but where you
Hyperphagia.
well, but this slingshot effect where you add more
Body fat overshoot.
body fat overshoot, right? Now you can be in a situation, right? A horrible situation where, particularly if you're an older person, you've lost muscle, you gain back more body fat than you had before. And that's a scary situation because the older you get, the tougher it is to sort of reverse that process. So, but I will say, I think it's a team effort, right? Like if us as, strength coaches and fitness professionals and working in conjunction with whether it's a dietitian or a medical doctor, if everybody's on the same page, I think I'm more optimistic after reading this book that this could be a fix that helps many people who have struggled with something like lifelong obesity, which we all know somebody who has, get over that hurdle and build some momentum so that in that process they are able to establish some sustainable habits. So, I agree that, it can't just be taking the magic pill, and that's the 100% fix. It has to be in conjunction with these other things like consistent strength training and, getting all of your essential amino acids and other nutrients that our bodies need. And we actually have a client right now who is going through this process. She started training with us before she was taking, I don't know which one of the drugs it is, but one of these GLP-1 agonist drugs. And her doctor prescribed her the drug, which she started taking, but they're only going to continue prescribing it while she's doing a diet and exercise program. So she trains with us doing strength training, and she works with a dietitian a couple times a month to keep checking in with this stuff.
So yeah, that sounds like a great sort of team effort, as you were saying.
Yeah.
And
that's a responsible prescription, which is not what I'm seeing a lot of.
Yeah, we need to not be, as you were saying, as fitness professionals, we need to be, non-judgmental and open, right? Embracing these people like as a support mechanism versus like, why are you taking that stuff, right? That's not the way to do it,
And to that point, right? I mean, we know that, and Dr. Campbell, feel free to chime in because you have a deeper depth of knowledge on this stuff. But if a person is dealing with a condition like obesity for an extended period of time, I mean, that can contribute to physiological changes in the gut and in the brain, right? So a person, for example, could potentially develop a leptin resistance, right? And so that might make it really tough for a person, even if they are eating a higher protein diet, to ever feel full, which just creates this perpetual cycle of, just making it really tough to get out of, being obese.
Yeah, and like you said, this could be for some, the impetus to kickstart something new.
Yeah, I just think, I have many people in my family tree who, have dealt with, being overweight, and, I've seen, a lot of time that gets coupled with depression, and, that just, if it affects your motivation, it affects your ability to just get going. And I do like the idea of people just getting a boost, and I like the way that you're thinking about this, Dr. Campbell, which this is about creating a healthy society for us all to live in. And that's one of the big takeaways from this book, Magic Pill, is that our culture, our American culture, has changed to where, I mean, we live in a food environment that prioritizes convenience over nutrition. There's not a whole lot of widespread education about what even is good nutrition. And in the book, the author, Johan Hari, uses Japan as a foil for the United States, because Japan is a wealthy, developed nation that passed a law. I can't remember when or what the law is called, but they passed a law that basically requires kids, when they're in school, to have nutrition education, for schools themselves to cook fresh meals. They don't have the, Little Caesars pizza lunches that, I had when I was in high school. And I know this is controversial for, many American companies, but the law also basically requires Japanese companies to monitor the health of their workers. And when they, if whatever, I don't know if they, exceed some threshold of, BMI, they can potentially, like, if they're a publicly traded company, they could be facing millions of dollars in fines. So it's basically,
Wow.
yeah. I mean, this is fascinating stuff. I mean, I was totally unaware of this dynamic, but to me, Japan is leading the world in this. And for the number one reason I think that is because this wasn't some heavy-handed government throwdown. Like, the Japanese culture is bought into this. And there's a positive social pressure, to
That's
be healthy.
awesome.
Their culture also, has a very strong proponent of sort of supporting children in general, right? Like, the whole society is programmed around kids, and like it's your job to keep those kids safe when you see them out in the world. You know what I mean? At every level, right? Little tiny kids are like going to the grocery store when they're like 4 years old. You know what I mean? And people go, "Oh, that's somebody. I got to keep an eye on this person, make sure he gets back at home safely," right? And they all recognize that as part of their job to protect them as they move through the world, right? And start to become independent much sooner, Yeah, interesting. That is fascinating. It's also horrifying for me, like, being a little older than these other guys. Like, I didn't have that experience with, like, the fast food in the high school system, right? And I saw it happen later on, right? Where all of a sudden you have literally like Taco Bell on the high school campus, right? Yeah. Soda pop vending, and they're making deals, and Coca-Cola's coming in, and like, that didn't exist when I was in school. And
tomato sauce on the pizza is a fruit now.
Yeah, I mean, we had much better food, and I didn't think it was great as a kid, but comparatively, right? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, when you were explaining the differences in cultures, I'm like, well, Japan doesn't have a Little Caesars, what do you call it? The lobbying arm. They don't have a lobbying group for Little Caesars like they have here. Not Little Caesars, but you know what I'm saying? Like, all of that, I'm sure, again, I'm outside my expertise here, but that's all lobbying.
Right.
There's some great conspiracy theories on social media about, who owns these fast food companies ultimately. It's like Bayer on the top, and then they own KFC at the bottom. So they sell you the food that makes you sick so they can sell you the pill later on down the line.
Hey,
I don't buy into that necessarily, but
vertical integration.
Vertical integration. Yeah.
Everybody should watch that movie, Idiocracy.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're like watering the crops with Gatorade. How come nothing's growing?
So I know, Dr. Campbell, we're getting close to your time limit here. One other thing I was curious to discuss with you is in relation to another piece of content you put out recently, which was about how essentially all diets and all diet studies are effective, because whether you're following vegan or carnivore or paleo or whatever, Whole30, doesn't matter. They're all effective because they eventually funnel toward a calorie deficit. And there's a conversation right now and a debate about and I do think we talked about this in our last conversation as well, about the some people call it the hormonal theory of obesity, right? And Jason Fung is the big proponent of that I mentioned earlier. He says, calories don't matter as long as you're, essentially keeping insulin, at the proper level. So at the end of the day, how important is calorie intake and how important are hormones when it comes to maintaining a healthy, body composition?
Well, if the goal is to lose weight, you can get to a weight loss destination through many roads, but the one thing that all roads have in common is a caloric deficit. Now, we can play a little bit of semantics, and I would even say I'm just going to increase somebody's protein intake.
Yeah.
And if they're currently not eating, if their protein intake's currently low, and I increase their calories, they'll lose body fat. I've seen it, and I give you some studies to demonstrate that.
We talked about that in our last conversation about how the thermic effect of protein is an excess 30%, calorie burn.
Yeah. So there's that. So there are some external circumstances that don't make this easy. But what the reason I made that post was to get around this diets, exactly what you said. Diets don't work. And that's insane. Like, okay, I'll give you 10,000 studies that have reported weight loss with a caloric deficit. You give me one where it doesn't. I'm just asking for one. And I don't think that study can be produced. So I trust, there's some ulterior motive. You're not trying to help people when those statements, you're trying to sell a book, you're trying to sell a product. There's something behind that.
Yeah.
And now when I make a global statement, and this ties into another statement I think we talked about earlier that I made, while a caloric deficit will help, what is a prerequisite for fat loss, there are certain situations, and I do think it is hormonal, particularly in this perimenopausal stage of life, where a certain percentage of women have to reduce their calories so much and be in such a severe caloric deficit to lose any weight. So why is that? Well, what's changing? Their hormones. So to me, and again, I have a lot to learn here, but that is my opinion on the energy balance equation or being in a caloric deficit. It still explains weight loss. But for some people, particularly in a hormonal change in their lives, it's more difficult for them where they have to do it more severely. And then in many cases, they get HRT, and now they can respond again with higher calories.
We actually have some clients that are experiencing this exact phenomenon at the moment, and this is exactly how it's played out. They've been meticulous with their exercise, with their caloric consumption,
demoralizing,
right?
For them.
And then the weight just isn't going. They are doing it all correct, and I know that they are. And then recently added some hormonal manipulation exogenously and felt much more balanced, right?
Yep.
Not just physiologically, emotionally, right? Just everything sort of evened out, with this struggle that they're going through. And they're doing it, right? And I know they are, and they're coming in and they're going, the weight is just barely falling off of me, right? Like, what do I have to do? You know what I mean? Like, how low do I have to go? Am I going to eat like 700 calories a day? You know what I mean? Like, what am I going to do? And yeah, you feel the pain, right, of these people that are genuinely doing it, because a lot of people don't actually do the work, and we know this. But you see the people that are doing it, but are struggling with this perimenopause or menopausal shift. And yeah, it's hard. You feel it's disheartening even as the coach, right? Because you see them working so diligently and seeing such small return for their effort.
So then how do we say, and again, I'm not, where I stand on caloric deficits, but there's clearly a hormonal aspect to this, at least in that population. So that what you just described, that is where my research is going. I feel like I spent my whole career as a fat loss researcher applying it to the easiest populations, which are young people. I'm going to try to take my same skill set methodology and now try to apply it to that population. And what's really unique about this, we have plenty of menopause studies, plenty of HRT trials, but what we don't have, I have not yet found this, is the female who has embraced the fitness lifestyle and them going into this phase of life. We don't have research on that because if you think back 20 or 30 years ago, women weren't lifting weights, or it was very rare. So now this generation of women who has embraced fitness are now going through this, and there's no research to rely on to say, well, what do we do here? So I'm very excited to hopefully be a pioneer in this. And again, I'm in the learning phase. I've got so much to learn.
Yeah,
Sounds very cool.
I always kind of have come from the approach that both things matter, right? We know that calories matter always in the end, but that hormones are at play, right? We can see responses from how even with the exact same amount of calories, there's a different response. For example, if I eat 300 calories from whole apples, right, versus 300 calories from apple sauce versus 300 calories from apple juice, right? There's different responses, right?
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Yeah, and people don't want, like, the pure Seco guys, right? They don't want to hear that, right? Like, calories a calorie, right? But we know glycemic index too. Like, there's people that hang their hat on that. We know that it's not the glycemic index because it's based in a vacuum, right? What happens when you eat a plain rice cake, right? Well, almost no one does that, right? And when you put peanut butter on that rice cake, you get a different.
Gone.
Yeah. So again, there are holes, I think, or at least some balance, right, to create, as you say. So I try to see both. Like, I tell people, calories matter, but where the source of those calories also matters, right? When you ultimately, because I want muscle to stay and fat to go. I don't want to just lose weight, right? So you will lose weight if you cut calories, no matter how you do it. But we don't want to lose just weight. We want to hang on to that muscle or build it, right? And so the manipulation has to be different in my mind.
Absolutely.
An interesting key takeaway I'm getting here, if either of you guys disagree, let me know. But it seems like, I mean, you're the example of our client who, went and got prescribed something to get a little bit of a hormone boost, or other client who might, be taking Ozempic to, kickstart the body fat losses. Maybe we are, optimistic supporters of a exogenous substance, legal exogenous substance to aid in the body composition process under the right circumstances.
I personally have always been a supporter of it, because I'm a freedom of choice person, right? I think that each person's body, they should manipulate it however they wish, as long as they're doing it intelligently and safely. And that includes, to me, exogenous hormone manipulation for all outcomes, like even if it's purely aesthetic, right? Why shouldn't we be able to do that, right? I can get breast augmentation if I want, but I can't just manipulate my hormones
for your birthday.
Outcome. Yeah, you know what I mean? So for me, it's become much more popular and much more common for, TRT, right? But even then, it didn't. For many years, there was a big stigma, like, you're taking steroids, it's illegal, right? Why are you doing it? Everybody's got to do it in the locker room on the down low, right? Why is that? Why isn't it just part of mainstream medicine? We have some people we've interviewed who believe that everyone should be manipulating their hormones exogenously for optimizing their health and well-being. And I don't know if it's true, but it should certainly be on the table as far as I'm concerned.
That was pretty much my opinion as well. Especially the freedom of choice aspect. That's what makes our country unique. So yeah. Now again, I guess I would also say there should be some limits on some things, or let me just say, let's not give drugs to people that are addicts. But then again, they're not paying for them. I am. Or the taxpayers are. So.
Right. Yeah.
Well, Dr. Campbell, it's been a treat as usual. That's we definitely will be excited if you become a regular guest on the TNT podcast.
I have to give an update once I start following the program, so I can tell you how it's going.
And sincerely, you and I should set up some time to check in separately, so we can touch base on the other stuff that you're working on, and help you with your programming. Any questions you have, or stuff you want to chat about, I'm always open.
Yes, yeah, thank you.
Your research working with perimenopausal women sounds fascinating, and makes me proud to know you, because if you can help a population that's genuinely having a struggle, then that's a pretty cool thing to be doing. You'll be a knight in shining armor for them.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I wish I could say I thought of this on my own, but my wife really struggled, so I was like, wow, now it's real.
Well, there you go. That shows that you have empathy. That's one of the core values here over at TNT: genuine empathy. And That's what makes the world go round.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, sir. Glad to have you here again with us today, and we'll hopefully talk again soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure.
Boom, baby.
What's up, people? Thank you so much for listening to this episode of
Truth, Not Trends.
That's right here at TNT Strength Headquarters, Truth Not Trends.
Please, if you enjoyed this episode, subscribe, rate, and review us on whatever platform you're listening to us on. And don't forget to share with a friend.
You can find us on the web at tntstrength.com.
That's right, TNT Strength now coming to you in person at 5255 College Avenue in Oakland, California. You can call the studio 510-768-5421. You can also text us at 855-796-9905.
Or shoot us an email at contact@tntstrength.com. And whatever you do, stay off of that stupid blue bubbly boasting.
The Brondo's got what plants crave. It's got electrolytes.
So wait a minute. What you're saying is that you want us to put water on the crops.
Yes.
Water. Like out the toilet?
Well, I mean, it doesn't have to be out of the toilet, but yeah, that's the idea.
But Brondo's got what plants crave.
It's got electrolytes.
Mixed and edited by Desmond McNeese for We Mixed It, LLC. Go to whatsoundsawesome.com.
I think that was an idiocracy joke.